start from the general position, and I will start from the general position and the opportunities of women in rural areas, which is based on the research conducted throughout the world, but mainly in Europe. Firstly, their position is determined by individual characteristics of rural women. According to my research, they are less educated than men, and they rarely have a driver license, which is especially true in older women. Secondly, their position is determined by household characteristics, because they usually, rural women usually take care of children, of older household members and daily needs. They have a limited time budget remaining for job seeking and for employment, having in mind that workplaces are usually located outside the local environment. In addition, in patriarchal society, a man is someone who have priority in every aspect in the household. So a man have a priority, has a priority when using a car. So a private transport modes are not available to rural women whenever they need it, if don't have their personal car, which is very rare situation, especially in Serbia. There are also some other vulnerable aspects of rural women's position, which is related to their economic status. You know, in the patriarchal society, a man is the one who controls the household budget. That means that he allocates the money to other household members, and this could put the women in the household in economic deprivation. Along that, you know, members, the women who are helping members in farm households are in deeper economic deprivation than rural women who work somewhere. So having all this in mind, a man is the one who makes the decision in the households. Thirdly, you can see here from your right side of screen, the women's position in rural areas is determined by rural community characteristics. In general, public transport public transport service in rural area is very low because the departures are very rare, especially in off-peak periods, when many rural women have a need to travel somewhere. You know, for the rural women who do not own a driver license, and there is a lot of such women in that position, public transport is the only transport alternatives for their needs. There are also some other aspects of rural human characteristics, like insecurity for women to travel by public transport. In some countries, they give up trips by public transport because of crime and harassment. It's not this is not so true in Europe, but in other countries there is some, like in Asia and Africa, there are some situations when they give up trips. Some transport modes are actually designed for the men in Africa, so using such transport modes by rural women is considered indecent, for example, for bicycles in some African countries. Also, there are few facilities and opportunities in rural areas because of their modest content and scarce object. So it means that everything which could improve their position is located usually outside the local environment. So if they do not have some transport alternative, they are confined to local environment and the contents that are inside them. All these characteristics, directly or indirectly, you can see here, I tried to make some relationship between this individual characteristic and what I would talk about social deprivation. Directly or indirectly, all these characteristics contribute to deprivation of rural women. This deprivation has three main forms: transport deprivation, economic deprivation, and social deprivation. Every type of deprivation could be considered the cause or the consequence of some other type of deprivation. If we look in this circle, we can conclude that the rural women are in some vicious circle of deprivation. When it comes to rural women in Serbia, everything I will say in the next slides will be based on transport-related research conducted in 2014, based on the sample of several rural settlements of different types. When we talk about the number, the population, male and female rural population in Serbia are approximately equal in numbers, but the illiteracy rate is much higher in rural women than in rural men, and also in much smaller number of cases, women are household heads, so they do not manage household. They are in pretty much cases they are helping members who are not paid for the work. And if we talk about the people who live alone, there are a lot of women who live alone without transport alternatives, because they are here are especially older women who don't have a driver license. Having in mind that transport alternatives in rural areas are very scarce, you know, the position of driver license is something that could be, it is very important to have some kind of freedom and to access to some facilities, opportunities in order to improve the position. So here you can see the percent of drivers in male and female population by age. If you look at percent of driver in female population, we can see that the percent of driver decreases with age. Practically above the age of 60, we do not have drivers among the female population. In average, we have 26% of rural women who owns a driver license. Maybe there is a hope that in younger generation, this situation will be surely better, but now this is only the modest 26%. So if they do not have a driver license, so they are limited to their local environment, and there is a greater chances for them to make trips within the local community and to have a lower mobility than men. In this diagram, you can see the differences between farm women, or non-farm women, and men, because the differences are even deeper between the women who are helping members of farm households and the women who are not associated with farming, maybe, but they are employed or something, have some another job to do. It is very interesting to say that 88% of on-farm women do not have a driver license, compared to 67% of non-farm women. I would like to say that is a very interesting result that a car ownership of the households does not impact the percent of drivers among female rural on-farm population. It is interesting to say also that the highest percentage of non-drivers, female non-drivers live in motorized households. So you can see now the some kind of deprivation or inequal position. It indicates to this. In order to get a clearer insight into deprived female position, here I will present you transport-related research results. Actually, their trip characteristics. In rural areas, daily mobility is usually much lower than in urban ones. It does not exceed 2 trips per day per capita. Men may, in my research, according to my research result, men made 1.67 trips per day. It is much more than number of trips or in rural women. Especially on farm women who made only 0.74 74 trips per day, and 2/3 of on-farm women didn't make any trips in the analyzed day in the research. The dominant trip purpose in men and off-farm women is the work, but on-farm women is the other purposes, some going to a field to work, some household related trip purposes. The percentage of trip within the local environment, you can see here the on-farm women, a half of their trips is made inside the local environment. The dominant transport mode is a passenger car, which is expected in rural areas with scarce transport alternatives, but on-farm women have a different dominant transport mode. It is walking. It indicates that they rarely go outside the local environment. The dominant trip purpose when they travel to town is other, not work like in men and women, but other. And these other purposes are related to medical service, going to physician, or taking children to school. Here we can see model split of male rural population, on-farm women and off-farm women. We can see from this slide that passenger car is the dominant mode in men and off-farm women, but in on-farm women, this mode has also high share, but they are the walking is the most dominant mode. Also, the public transport share is 10%. It is the highest public transport share when we compare men, on-farm women, and off-farm women. During the survey, the respondents specified the conditions under which they would use public transport more. And it is very interesting that in general, rural population has completely negative attitudes toward the public transport because of the low level of service. So pretty high percentage of rural population in all of these 3 groups of population reported that they would not use public transport under any circumstances. They would rather walk. And in this answer, there is a hiding. There is one hiding situation, and this hiding situation is related to some other possibility, and it is transport provided by neighbors and acquaintances. It is a very often situation in the rural areas. They do not have your car, and you do not have public transport service which is appropriate for you. You can rely on your neighbors and acquaintances, and this is a very popular transport alternative, not official but very popular among the rural population, having in mind their social integration in their local community, especially in communities who are associated with farming more than other ones. When we talk about the hypothetically improved public transport service for on-farm women, it is very likely that the closer bus stop would influence to use public transport often than usually, because they give up trips by bus because of the great distance from home to the bus stop. And this is very important answer, because the transport alternatives of on-farm women who do not have a driving license is very, very modest. So this is a chance for them to have the opportunity to go to some individual trip, not as a passenger, because as a driver they do not have access to a private car, but they make mutual, but they could make individual trip by public transport. At the end, I would like to say that the mechanism who are using currently to establishing gender equality in rural areas and improve the women's status are not tackling a rural female population, because they are deprived in many ways. Women who are helping members in farm households are in a very in the worst position, in that they are very particularly vulnerable group, because they do not have a salary, pension and health insurance. Patriarchal education is deeply set in all spheres of life. So the contemporary social trends and initiatives to improve rural women position, it is very hard to reach rural women actually. So for this reason, the rural women, especially on farm women, are in greater risk of social exclusion. So we can conclude, it seems that the gender equality issue is or still open or always open, and maybe achieved to only a certain extent under these current rural circumstances. Thank you. Thank you to all of you, and I'm here for your questions.